Good evening. This is the Tuesday night Bible reading of the Psalms here at the High Mountain Presbyterian Church. If this is the first time you've stumbled across us, I hope you'll enjoy our time together. We talk, we share, we read, and we try to bring our understanding in line with what the hopes and dreams of the writers of Scripture were and are. My name is Pastor Lou Kilgore. I'm here at the High Mountain Presbyterian Church in Franklin Lakes, and we have joining us by a Zoom. You'll hear the Zoom conversations in the background, and we're just getting started, so we think there'll be a couple of more. There's one person joining us with the Zoom right now, but we usually roll slow in the beginning and then wait until the others are able to join us. We have found it a little bit harder to get started because it's so beautiful outside, and people I know are sitting and enjoying the weather, which is not a bad thing at all. So we'll just we'll wait a little while until some of the others join us, and then we'll get started. But welcome to you who join in to see and listen and learn as we read through the Bible. On Wednesday nights, it's the Psalms, and we are currently at reading and talking about Psalm 14. And then on Wednesday mornings, tomorrow morning, we are reading Isaiah and struggling with the understanding and the theology of how Isaiah sees the nations and the world cooperating together in some way or another to accomplish what God wants in the world. So I'm going to stop talking now and just wait for our others to come and join us. So tomorrow, Barbara, we can look at calendars with Chris and give a couple optional dates.
Yeah, I reached out to Coalition because I don't have her email anymore.
Okay.
So I want to, she lives in Westchester.
Okay.
So her husband is a pastor at White Plains Presbyterian Church.
Oh.
I can't remember his name is not D'Amico, and I can't remember it now, but I will check it out.
Okay.
But as far as I know, he's, when I go online, it's still showing that he's still there.
Okay.
So as far as I know, she lives there, but she's very involved in the Fair Food Program as well as Coalition. So, I'm just thinking that she might be out and about a lot.
Well, it'll be great if we can have her come in person and we can give her some time in the main time of worship, and then do that thing where we have a little dinner afterwards right here. I really liked that format for
yes,
keeping people together and then eating and then having some time to think further about what we talk about. I think it's great.
right.
I saw that on the news today. Unfortunately, there was some big violence in Uganda.
Last week there was a school that was.
Yeah, it's the same issue. The school was attacked and just hundreds, like kids just killed. But I think it's on the other side, closer.
Yeah, it is in the west.
Right, it's in the
west.
west.
Because I looked at the map. I haven't talked to or texted Elaine lately, but when I looked, it's on the west and they're on the east. But it's awful, absolutely awful.
Yeah, it is awful. I can't even imagine it. It's like reading the Bible.
Geary is his last name. I can't find him, but let's see if I can find him. He's the pastor at White Plains. Jeffrey Geary. It's her husband. I don't know where Debbie is. I know she was coming.
Hello.
Oh, there she is, just as you asked.
Speak of the devil.
Now,
No pun
easy.
intended.
Easy.
No, I didn't have any trouble getting on tonight, so I thought, where are you?
Yeah, I was just thinking I might text you and say, okay, so are you having trouble getting on? No.
Yeah, I couldn't get on last week.
There's still something wrong with this. I had a little bit of a problem, but for some reason, but it's on, I'm okay now.
Okay.
We're deciding that it's Psalm 14 that we're up to.
Uh-huh.
Does that work in your record?
Are you talking to me? Because
Yes.
I never know where we are.
You don't have a record.
No, I don't have a record. At least not as it concerns Psalms.
Yeah.
And I see Colette coming on too.
Yes, I see Colette too. Hi, Colette.
Hi.
That's not the. Okay. PSAL.
All right. Well, if you're ready, I guess we should begin. I have the live stream is running, so the others are listening in and ready, and I think we could begin. Colette, are you ready?
Yeah, well, I'm walking to my bedroom, but
Okay.
I can hear you.
All right, good. So we'll count on you. We're going to be starting, I think we're reading tonight, we're starting with Psalm 14. Is that right? Is that
Yep.
what we decided, Barbara?
Yes.
Okay.
I say so.
All right. So who would like to read?
I'll read, that's fine.
Okay, good.
You ready to roll? Okay. Fools say in their hearts, there is no God. They are corrupt. They do abominable deeds. There is no one who does good. The Lord looks down from heaven on humankind to see if there are any who are wise, who seek after God. They have all gone astray. They're all alike perverse. There is no one who does good. No, not one. Have they no knowledge, all the evildoers who eat up my people as they eat bread and do not call upon the Lord? There they shall be in great terror, for God is with the company of the righteous. You would confound the plans of the poor, but the Lord is their refuge. Oh, that deliverance for Israel would come from Zion. When the Lord ensures the fortunes of his people, Jacob will rejoice. Israel will be glad. Okay. A little doom and gloom here.
Yeah, sometimes life evidently can be very discouraging. These claims about all the people and all the world and all that, like it's clearly, again, at least here, they're not trying to make any claim about God feeling that way about the world. It's still just how the psalmist feels and experiences his life or her life in relationship to how the people around them are behaving. And it's amazing to me, it always comes back to the issue of how are the poor treated. How are the people who are, who are poor, how are they treated? It's like the litmus test of any society and the view of what God cares for. How do you care for your poor? It's amazing. I can't, part of what amazes me is spending so much of my life listening to people preach and teach about the Bible. This issue has not really ever been in the forefront of any preaching or teaching that I've ever heard. And yet it surfaces almost in every single psalm. It surfaces throughout Isaiah. It's on the lips of Jesus all the time. And yet it takes such a minor role or a minor place in the way, the Bible is understood in the world. And the idea I think I pick up here, the fool says in their hearts there is no God, which means how we treat those who are poor or how we treat those who are down and out has no consequences because there is no God. There is not a God who cares about the marginalized people. There is not a God who cares, and that way we can treat them any way we want to. That's how we get away with it, because there's no accountability. So go ahead. The evildoers act like as if they can eat up the people like they are bread. I'm not sure I understand fully how the Lord is the refuge of the poor. I mean, how does that help? Hello, Judy. Welcome.
Hello. Good to be here.
Oh, good.
Sorry.
So we just finished reading Psalm 14 and got immersed in the very sort of depressing worldview of the writer of the psalm.
I came in a good time, yeah.
So,
Maybe I should go out again and come back in later.
all right. Are you gonna bring some joyful word with you when you come, or are you gonna join in the chorus of despair?
Of course.
What I don't understand, part of it is Zion. I thought Zion also meant Israel, but in this case, Zion means Jerusalem. Does Zion always mean Jerusalem?
I think sometimes they're interchanged. There's Zion often refers to the raised elevation, the Mount of Zion. So, and the idea was that in their cosmology, that God was going to come in some significant and powerful way, arriving on Mount Zion, and therefore then moving out into the world from that location. That's also relatively close, as I understand it, to the location of Jerusalem. And so that phrase that Ronald Reagan used, the city on the hill, that hill is Zion, and the city is Jerusalem. And from there, if there is accountability in the world, if there is accountability for abuse of the poor, marginalization of those who are crippled and those who are misunderstood in the world, if there is accountability, and the psalmist believes there is, that movement of accountability will originate at that physical location of what is the center of Jerusalem, but also of Israel, which is a reference to the southern kingdom. No, the northern kingdom. So Judah is in the south and Israel is in the north. And from there is hope. It's very similar in some ways to what they got caught up in the time of David, where David was going to bring justice into the world and they were going to force it upon the rest of the nations. And you hear some of that again, that, God is going to come. Oh, that Zion, deliverance for Israel would come from Zion. They are under the cruel hand of oppressing armies. I don't know who. I was going to look to see who was the enemy that was threatening them here in this psalm. The footnote says there's perhaps a reference to Mount Zion, as in Psalm 48, where the wicked will be punished and the poor will be upheld. The psalm moves from the individual to the community as Israel lives in the hope that salvation will come from Zion. when the Lord restores may refer to the hoped-for restoration of Jerusalem and its destruction in 586. I don't know which invading army. Was it the Babylonians by then? I think it was. And so a lot of this oppression of the poor is the oppression of the peoples of Israel, because they are made slaves and they are without land and they're without resources. And the conquering armies treat them like they're just chaff. And so the cry is, when, oh God? I mean, I don't say in my heart there is no God. I say there is a God. But when are you going to come and turn this table upside down as you've promised?
And it says the Babylonians,
Okay.
according to Google, 587, 586, the Babylonians took Jerusalem, destroyed the first temple, and burned down the city.
So that's now, in a way, there's sort of a, we have trusted in God, but things don't look good. But we're hoping that God will come through and endure for us, and then ultimately establish us again. When I read the Psalms, I don't feel as defensive as I do sometimes when we read Isaiah and some of the other prophets with their vengeful attitude, because I feel like what comes through is how discouraged you become, or anybody becomes, when the events of the world follow like this. It sometimes just seems like evil people with evil designs have no restraint. They can do whatever they want to do. And who can contain them? I was feeling some of this when I was watching the news of that attack that took place in Uganda. When these militants came into this school and just hacked the children up. They randomly killed, hundreds of kids, teenagers, and then they only took as hostage, they took like 6 kids hostage, and I thought, I don't know if those kids are lucky or worse off. But you think about what kind of human consciousness is going on in the lives of people who just commit atrocity. Just no sense of, I would call innocence. Children, what can they have done to make you mad? And yet they're dead. They're hacked up. They're gone from the earth. And in that place, then, if I was there, I can't imagine. I do not know how to imagine what it would be like to be there, nor what it would be like to get up the next day and figure out what you're going to do now or how you're supposed to feel. But I'm not sure, given that my own belief that God somehow, behind all this chaotic, murderous rage, that there was a God. I don't know. So, the opening says, fools say in their heart, there is no God. I'm like, well, I don't know. There's some circumstances where you got to wonder. Right?
I agree.
Right? I have to admit, there are movies and television shows and documentaries that are done to sort of describe so we can experience some of these great atrocities. And I have to tell you, I can't even watch.
Yeah.
I can't watch. I just, okay, fine, I believe you, because I don't need more evidence about the abominable spirit that human beings can adopt.
But what has happened to the people who do these atrocities to make them believe that this is the way to live?
Right.
Yeah, and I think that's a really, that's a good question for the way I think about things, because I think that people's behavior makes sense. As much as it doesn't make sense, it makes sense when you look at what they have experienced. I'm trying to think of that phrase, that turn of phrase, which says, those that commit acts of violence have been victims of violence. It's a very big cycle. But also sometimes with these human beings that do these tribal assassinations, I just think they get caught up in the idea that the death of, or that these people somehow are a threat to their existence. So they look like they're just being randomly violent, but in their minds, they believe they're fighting for their lives from something.
But to kill children.
Yeah. How are the children a threat? How are school children who are going to school every day, getting up and going to school, how are they a threat? I know the Taliban thinks that women going to school is a threat. Education, I guess, is a stirring up of liberation. So if you can eliminate education, a lot of dictators have done that. They have removed education from the resources that people can experience, because by that way they believe they can keep them under their thumb.
And to a lesser degree, they ban books too.
Yeah, I was going to say, books. Remove books. No reading, no writing, no learning, nothing. And, in the American South, the belief was that they had to work very hard to keep their slaves from becoming educated. They didn't want them to know how to read. They did not want them to know how to function in society at all, except to pick cotton and behave.
I think these groups of people who are doing these atrocities, supposedly this is an ISIS-connected group, but I'm sure they have nothing to do with Islam. They're just, I think it's politically motivated, because there's been a lot of unrest between Congo and Uganda and the Museveni presidency, and it's a political thing. I guess they feel the best way to get their way and whatever they want, I don't know what they want, but is to terrorize people.
Yeah.
And what better way to strike terror into the hearts of people than to kill children? I mean, it's an abomination. Who would think that would happen? And that's how you terrorize people, doing the unthinkable. Talk about ungodly.
Well, how many times has it happened here in
That's all
school
the time.
children?
Yep.
The most vulnerable.
The difference here, it seems to be individuals that carry out a lot of this terrorism.
Yeah,
But,
and they don't seem to have any political agenda except to work out whatever the horrible pain that is in their heart and in their gut. They just spew it all out so that everybody feels the same way they feel. But maybe it's connected in some ways. I mean, when I listen to some of the summaries about this, I feel like what happens in the world is that a political party comes to power. We've sort of exported the idea of democracy around the world. And so they take votes, and then with votes, a certain party comes to power. But as that party comes to power, if there are 4 or 5 other factions that don't want that party in power, look out for the little people in that nation. Because these juntas and these groups that go around are only seeking to unseat the stability of the government. And of course, the government has the military and the police, and so there you've got the makings of the war. And it's a terrible war. It's a war fought on the backs of just, like near the psalmist, like it's all on the backs of the weakest people.
Right. Right. It's the same. Yeah. The psalmist is saying the same thing. How can people, when you stop believing in a power higher than yourself, I guess,
Yep.
makes you susceptible to, trying to get whatever you can get out of this world and doing horrible things to people. The psalmist is saying they've lost their respect for God and then their respect for other human beings. And the poor are always caught,
Yeah.
in the middle.
So where, the question always is, when these horrible things happen, so where is God in all of this?
That's what Lou said before. Why it's the poor shall find refuge in God. It's kind of not clear here if there is a refuge to be had, but
Yeah,
And it seems like if there is, the implication is that refuge is in the passing of time. That when time passes, not revenge, but that an end will come to this kind of suffering for this kind of poor people, because somehow God will, I don't know, cause an earthquake or something will happen that results in these godless people losing power. It's a loose thought. I don't want to try to defend it, but it occurs to me that in the earlier parts of the interaction of the Israelites with the other nations in the Promised Land, there was a sense in which all the groups had a god. They weren't the same God, but everybody had a god. And it just seems to me that although they might be brutal to each other, this sense that they were accountable to some kind of God made them a reasonable people. But here, the psalmist is saying the experience for the psalmist is, this is a group of people who have no God. They don't feel they're accountable. I think in one of the psalms we just read, it was, they believe that you could say anything, lie, and say anything at all because there's no one keeping record of lies. Like, it doesn't matter. So if lying gets you more power, then lie as hard as you can.
ooh,
But there's no, the psalmist says the fool says there's no God. Well, okay, I'll go along with that because I happen to believe that there is a God, and I believe that God cares about what happens in the affairs of human beings. But there are lots of evidence where you could say, I don't know. We might want to look away from this if we're going to remain convinced that God cares.
well, the psalmist is saying it in some future time, deliverance will come. He doesn't say how, or if it's going to be timely enough for the people alive then, or some future generation. All the psalmist says, God will deliver Israel.
Right. Yeah. The wicked will be punished and the poor will be upheld. And that's not just individuals, it's also the community. When the Lord restores, may refer to the hope for restoration of Jerusalem. But, I don't know, some of the later in the prophets, it says, based on what? Why would you want that Jerusalem back? Because that Jerusalem was no city of bright hope and generosity and care in the world. It wasn't. The prophets will tell you while it was going on, the city was destroyed because it was full of thieves and bandits. And it had wandered so far from anything good on the face of the earth. And so God saw to it that it was destroyed. So we've talked in this group enough to say we don't really particularly like that way of thinking about God and don't necessarily accept that that's how God works, especially because if you think that a nation doesn't refer to all the people in the nation, so why should all the people who live there suffer from the decisions of the people who are in power? How is that justice?
Yeah, and you don't know who the psalmist is referring to when he says, all of the people have gone astray.
Yeah.
They're all perverse.
Yes.
Well, is it all, and that doesn't include the poor? Or is it all, including the poor? Or, it's not clear.
Well, he's pretty emphatic about it. He says there's not one who does good. No, not one. Like, let me repeat myself. There's not one person who does good.
Right.
So I agree. Even the poor?
I find that hard to believe that there's not one. Although we heard that in the story of Noah.
Yes.
So, I don't know.
I don't know. Seems like a gross oversimplification to me. I mean, in the Noah story, it said that each one had turned to their own way, and everyone was doing what they thought was right in their own sight. And I get that. I get the chaos of that, following the lack of structure and all the rest of it that was taking place in that ancient primordial world. But I don't know. If the whole herd of sheep is moving in one direction because the shepherd moved them there, are they all guilty for trampling the corn? It's like, and in some ways, Jeremiah and the other prophets come back and they say, no, it's not the sheep, it's the shepherds. The shepherd leads them astray and they hold responsibility for everything that happens. I think that's fair.
So maybe the psalmist means all. He means maybe all who are in charge.
Right. Yeah, all the leaders of all the nations, they have gone crazy with the belief that there's no one to hold them accountable.
Okay, that sounds very contemporary.
I know. I wondered when we were going to break through.
Yeah.
And allow.
You can't not but think of that.
No, you can't. You can't not think of that. There's just so many examples of it from our world today. And, it's. And I get frustrated. I don't think of myself as a sheep who follows blindly. I work pretty hard to not, and I check my allegiances all the time. I try to read and listen to a variety of voices, but I get very frustrated with the enormity of some of the crowds of sheep. People who just follow blindly.
Oh, look at today. Look at today.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Exactly. I mean, and you question, what are these people, how do they think? What are they thinking when somebody is standing in front of you, who is a liar, a cheat, a felon, and you still follow?
Yeah.
What's the motivation? What is the motivation for people to do that?
I think, this is my little theory I'll throw out, and that is, when the government is in chaos, it benefits people who want to, they can move their pawns on the chessboard of life into power. And I went to a Grove City College in Western Pennsylvania, and didn't really know fully until after I was immersed in it that it was a Christian college, quote unquote, but it was a Christian capitalist college. Thoroughly believed in capitalism and Christianity as the great idea of God. And they had this view of government And they believed, and they taught this in the economics classes and the political theory classes. These were not slouches. They believed that the founding fathers, guess it was all fathers, created the three forms of government, the three heads of government, in order to create chaos so that the government would never, ever be powerful enough to control the people. So that what we think of as checks and balances were actually built into the Constitution to keep government in check, to keep it just stirred up enough against itself so that it could never, ever really accomplish anything. They hated a king, but they hated every form of governmental control. They wanted the government out of economics. They wanted the government out of even education. They wanted the government out. The only thing they believed the government was good for was for a police force and protection and safety for them. And they made no bones about it. Like everything else was an attempt to make something out of nothing. That the three branches of government had just enough power to keep any one of them from ever really having any significant effect on the lives of free American citizens.
And when they say free, what are they talking about? Economic freedom,
Yep.
mostly, I think?
Economic
In other
freedom,
words,
but freedom,
Yeah,
freedom
you're
from...
making money, and
Right.
it's a good thing. God wants you to make money. And anything that makes you have to share your
No.
money, like taxes, that's not a good thing.
No, it's an abomination. Because it's every man and woman for themselves. And that is ultimately their proud belief, is that you ought to have enough faith in human beings, let them on their own. And then they also had this belief that there were a little bit like, this is where it kind of gets waxing into kind of government and God, because they believed there were controls built into the world. They believed in God, but they believed that, it's like there was an inevitability about things. If you were abusing people, ultimately your company would go down. But you didn't need the government there to keep you out of it. The inexorable laws of the universe. That's what they talked about. They said it's like...
So God is the checks and balances.
Yeah. God is and they would talk about how gravity, like, do you see gravity? You don't see gravity, but gravity is at work, and it holds everything down on the earth. So their argument was, get out of trying to control other human beings.
How prevalent is that philosophy in Christianity? Very, or?
Well, it's behind and almost invisible in a lot of Christianity. But it's a unique combination of capitalism and Christianity, because it's free market economy. It's free markets. It's get the government out of market controls, get them out of price controls, get them out of putting their finger on the scale in the world and affecting who are the winners and the losers. For Christians, when they go to church, it's an underlying philosophy which is unidentified, but it's at the heart of what a lot of Christians think is American patriotism. That patriotism is freedom from control, which is why when you get around to the idea of, they should never have referred to it as gun control. Because when you have the government trying to do gun control, you are running right up against this I'm free and no one has the right to control me attitude, which is deep in the heart of the philosophy of, I'm going to use the word conservative, I don't know how else to talk about it, but deep in the heart of American conservative Christianity. It's leave me alone. Now, the big contradiction going on in my mind right now is, so then why are you controlling abortion? Like, why are you
Oh,
so,
that's it.
yeah,
Yeah, and the books that you read and the vote, you know, that you can or cannot send, you know, mail ballots yeah.
yeah,
So
so,
it's freedom from control for me, but not for everyone else.
Well, you
exactly.
need to control women. That's a given, right? I mean, you have to control women. That's kind of a theme, across the board in conservative societies.
Yeah, because,
Women are to be controlled, otherwise you have chaos again.
yeah, so every woman's place of belonging in the world is under the control of a man, her husband, her boss or something. But the idea that women should be out there and living into this same kind of freedom is an abomination. It's ridiculous. First of all, women are not capable of that kind of independent thinking. And,
Right.
and believe me, I still struggle to even say it out loud, but there are so many places in the Christian experience in the United States where that is believed.
Well, look at the Southern Baptists.
Yes, look at them. And they're the largest denomination
Yeah.
in the United States.
And women can no longer be pastors,
No.
no longer lead the congregations.
No, they can't.
Yeah.
And I read yesterday, the day before, there was a Christian Reformed church, which is very big in this area. It comes out of Minnesota, but it's spread all over. They're all over here. They adopted in their general conference a new statement that the church will no longer ordain anyone who's gay or lesbian, but also anyone who is already ordained is to lose their ordination if they are gay or lesbian. And one further step, every clergy person in the entire national denomination must sign a pledge that they will not support gays and lesbians, transgendered people in any capacity whatsoever. They have to sign this pledge or they lose their ordination and they're out of the church. That was just passed on I think it was
What
Saturday.
kind of Christianity is that?
Yeah, I know. It's the new emerging Christianity, which
Scary.
is supposed to be, wedded to this economic policy, which says, let us alone, we'll do the right thing, and then all of a sudden you turn around. As long as the Christian people are the one pulling the control slots, they're fine. They're fine.
This seems a theme in all three of the Abrahamic faiths. There's a very strong conservative movement in Judaism nowadays, especially in Israel. And the same thing, it's always been a theme in the background of Islam. So, this, who do we exclude or who do we keep from positions of power? And it seems to be gaining in popularity in all three of those religions. Why? I don't know how that would appeal to anyone, but I don't know.
I don't know either. I mean, my brother and his wife are members of, it's not even American Baptist or Southern Baptist. It's a more fundamental Baptist church, big church. A lot of young people go to it. And you go to that church and they have, first hour of their gathering is their education hour. But in that gathering, the men and women do not learn together. They don't. The women go off to their own classes. There's a lot of them. When I say a lot of them, they have like 500 people divide up into these classes. And they go off and the women learn together with the women. And then they have children in their Sunday school, but no women are allowed to teach the children.
Right.
The teaching of the children in that Christian Baptist fundamentalist setting, you cannot leave the children. The children can be taught at home by their mothers, but when it comes to church, the things of God have to be taught to children by men.
Oh,
Why has it become so regressive? I mean, all the religions just, is it with the advent, I would say Trump, I mean, the chaos, in government, in religion, in our society today, what is it? What's the trigger?
I hear from, I start out by thinking this already, and then I hear it from leaders in the civil rights movement, in the Black Lives Matter movement, in women's liberation movement. It's all about backlash. It's, it took my breath away when Obama got elected president. And especially because during his presidency, he endorsed gay marriage. And when that happened, I know my wife will remember when I said to her, oh my gosh, we are in for it now. We are in it. Because when you look at history, when there is progress, what I call progress made in terms of human rights and in liberation and in really endorsing what I think is the call of God for human beings to be free to live their lives. That's not just a political statement for me, it's what I believe. But whenever that freedom is given voice and gets a new gulp of breath of fresh air, get ready, because the backlash is coming. And I think the waves, the tidal wave of backlash of some of the social changes, the laws that have been changed, all of it, and there's things getting swept up in the backlash that weren't even in the wave to begin with. The abortion rights, Roe v. Wade, has been sitting there on the books for 50 years. And now
now they want to control conception too.
Yeah, they do. They want birth control back.
All the way,
All the way back. And when I was in college, a philosophy major, and we took biomedical ethics classes, we looked at the Roman Catholic Church at that time and their doctrine about their ultimate belief in faith was you should not use birth control. If you wanted to limit the size of your family, you were to use the rhythm method. And then you were also supposed to accept the fact that the urge to have sex was God's work in both of your bodies to bring population into the world. And you should not resist the Spirit. You should absolutely not resist. So if a woman were to conceive, there's only one way a woman could conceive. And that was if God wanted to bring a child into the world. So birth control was thought of as trying to subvert the will of God. And
it's getting to the point where, when some of these right-wing politicians say things, and in the past you'd always go, oh, yeah, right, okay, that'll never happen. Now it's getting scary. I mean, just recently, some legislator in Indiana suggested that we should put an end to interracial marriage.
yeah,
Oh, for God's sakes. I mean, how far do you want to go with this nonsense? How many hundreds of years do we want to go back?
yeah, they do. They do want to go back. They want to go back. It's a
it is
backlash.
regressive. Yeah,
It's a
To the good old
backlash.
days.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, a couple of years ago, I would have said, ha, 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 that'll never happen. Now, it's like, that is scary. When you start talking about this, and they always put it in terms of states' rights. They want the states to be able to, legislate whatever they say the people in their state want. But what they really mean is, eventually we want this to be the rule of the land.
Yeah.
That's what's scary about all of this nonsense, because some of it's coming true. How do they do this?
And it's almost back to medieval times. I mean, if we keep going further and further back, as we're taking all these small steps, it's very frightening.
And taking the decision whether to have a child or not to have a child out of the hands of the women is a classic. It is a classic plank of, the control of men over women 150 years ago.
Absolutely.
It's clear. that they do not want a woman to be able to make the most fundamental decision. And they say, well, you know, if she wanted to make a decision, she shouldn't have had sex. Well, it's never been that way in history, not ever. You know, if we only ever had the children in the world that were the result of a decision, there would be no people in the world. And so what happens is more power is given into the hands of women when they can control. I mean, studies have been done in the reason women can return to the workforce and the reason women's role after a divorce is finally improving is because women are able to control when they have children and when they don't.
Most people in this country are in favor of women having control over their reproductive lives.
Right.
And those include married men who don't want 15 children either. So, you know, what do we do when the majority is ruled by the minority?
Yeah, right.
Something wrong with that.
Well, when the other
Do we
side,
have a silent majority now?
yeah, I don't
Of
know.
people that are saying we
Yeah.
can't do anything about it?
That's scary, isn't it?
You know, when the minority rule the majority, this is just how I feel. When the minority rule the majority and it's the other side, or when the progressives and the people that look for change are that minority, and the majority of those who disagree with all that, there's usually war. There's revolution. You know, and that's why I think, you know, there are so many factors in the United States. These are people who are in the minority. They are, in fact, in the minority. But they will not settle for majority rules. They will not. And so they will, maybe like even these armies from Psalm 14, they will increase their power. Not just by the number of people, but by the threat that they bring. You know, maybe that's what's going on too in the political scene in Uganda. You know, it's threat. It's not about majorities.
You said something interesting a little while ago about Obama becoming president. You know, things were going forward at such a rate where, you know, freedom where there was no freedom in a lot of different areas, and then suddenly Obama becomes president. You know, which was probably the culmination of that freedom, and then the backlash.
Yeah.
Maybe contributing greatly to that backlash.
I-
We had freedom in the country. We had a black as president. Maybe we should just, you know, halt this whole thing. Yeah.
And what's interesting is, you know, when Obama is president, it's Obama, no drama. So for 8 years, you have the most boring, steady, non-chaotic government we've ever had. And then the gift we get, the backlash then, is 4 years of the most chaotic government you've ever seen in your life.
I wonder if drama is a part of it's certainly a spin-off of, I was going to say, is it a part of the motivation of these people? But it isn't. It seems it's a spin-off of it.
It's the method.
Drama
Is the method. It's the chaos.
Yes, yeah.
It's
that accompanies, you know, what's going on now.
yeah.
And I wonder if chaos means regression. I don't know, but it just seems that, yeah. And what are the good people doing? I mean, you talked about the silent majority, you know, and you know, who's standing up, you know, to where's Goliath?
I remember during the Vietnam experience, you know, that horrible mess of the clash of lack of real clear goals. I remember there was a man in my church who had lived through terrible parts of the Vietnam experience, and he was a platoon leader, and the whole platoon of 19-year-old boys was killed, and he was 21 years old as their leader, and he survived. And he would, in the confidence of my office, he would talk about his experience. And he told about the strategy of the U.S. government and the soldiers there was they couldn't really win a war. They couldn't. So they would go on these, let's see, they were called HA assignments. HA assignments. And there would be a platoon of 10 armed soldiers. They'd get into a helicopter and they would go drop them somewhere along a supply line. And their HA assignment was harass and annoy. Their whole mission was to harass and annoy the systems that were being set up to supply food. They didn't, and they would hang in there. They'd go in, they'd throw grenades randomly, they would shoot, they would get into trees, and they were just there to annoy the enemy and to bring chaos. And honestly, I feel like we've been invaded by some platoons of HA people. They exist just to harass and annoy.
And then you have the emergence of AI, and that's scary
Yeah.
too. So much of this now is out of hand.
Yes. I was sitting in traffic the other day in a massive traffic jam on Route 78. And I was talking with Laura, and I said, in some ways, the whole drama of AI has already moved upon us in ways we don't even imagine. Because when you're on the interstate and you see all those tractor trailers, every one of those tractor trailers and every piece of item that is in those boxes of tractor trailers has been directed, established, and put on the road by a computer. The assignments are picked up and the computers are assigning them. Logistics are not done by people anymore. Every one of those moving freighters that goes up and down the highway is there and is moving and driving at the rate and speed with the stuff it has because a computer has told it to go there. We don't yet have the computers driving the trucks, but I don't think we're far from it. Everybody talks about, self-driven cars. What about when they're self-driven tractor trailers? I'm going to leave the road. I'm going to go back to walking.
Horse and buggy.
Yeah. But I think that we are in a major, major push to go back to something.
To go backwards.
To go backwards. And, it was in some ways it was a huge unexpected leap that Barack Obama could get elected and be living in the White House. It was unexpected. It was unthought of, but celebrated by so many people. But underneath and in ways that I was never privy to, I know that the members of my extended family and the people in the valleys throughout Pennsylvania and throughout the South they were just clicking their fingers and waiting because they were not going to take this level of change in society. They were not.
So who benefits from the backwoods movement?
The small people in local governments benefit. They get back into charge. They don't want, big government is the enemy. And so the friend
White males.
What's that, Barbara?
White males.
White males, exactly.
They're afraid of what's happening and, what is happening as they become the minority. And
Yes.
the control is starting to be slipping away.
Yeah, and they're not gonna stand by and watch it go. They're not.
Okay.
They're demonstrating the level of chaos they can create, which will ultimately allow control to settle back down to the local areas where the good old white men are still in charge.
Is it Georgia that they mentioned that the number of congressional sites because they gerrymandered it to the point that even though the population, the percentage is great in number of blacks, but they're all in 3 districts
Right.
compared to, I think, a dozen districts or something, because they gerrymandered all. So they are, they're working it out
Yeah,
somehow or other, even though they're the minority.
So where is the opposition? Where is the?
Well, here we are, the silent majority,
That's right.
yeah,
So where,
the peaceful group.
what's the light under our, rear ends? When does it happen?
What do we do, and how do we do it?
Yeah, yeah.
well, and the psalmist says, God will fix it.
Yeah.
As oppression grows and the weak are marginalized, don't be foolish and start thinking God doesn't have a hand in it, because God will bring it about, I guess. I'm a skeptic, but that doesn't make me a disbeliever in God. It doesn't make me a disbeliever in God. It just makes me a disbeliever in the ways of God. I just don't know what they are.
But are they the ways of God or the ways of man?
Yes, they are the ways of man. Totally the ways of man.
I'm not going to blame God on this.
No, I don't. But can't you blame God for not?
Human beings.
But can't we blame God for not being a little more heavy-handed in controlling human beings?
That's not what God does for me.
I
God
know.
is not a Republican. Right.
But if I go in the grocery store and there's people in there who have kids and they don't control their kids, I don't get mad at the kids. I get mad at the people who don't control the kids. Like, come on. Control your kids a little bit, will you? So I want to say to God, come on. Like, we were making
Control your kids?
Yeah, control your kids. We're making some good progress here. We're making good progress. But
All
wow.
of these groups, use God. I mean, the evangelicals, they intermingle their thoughts, and their mission with God.
Yeah.
It's frightening.
Yeah, they do. And I guess all of us human beings, whether we're religious or not, we have our opinions, and we think our opinions are more than just our opinions. We believe we're right.
Of course.
And when we believe we're right, that's when whether we say it or not, whether we use God language or not, we believe we're on the side of the powers of the universe.
Mm-hmm.
And so being convinced that we are right, wow, really makes us dangerous. Let's read the next. No, go ahead. What were you going to say, Judy?
It's so hypocritical because, get government off our back, and yet they're in every single part of our lives.
I know.
Right.
Everywhere.
Yeah. Let's read the next psalm.
Okay, Psalm 15, a Psalm of David. O Lord, who may abide in your tent, who may dwell on your holy hill? Those who walk blamelessly and do what is right and speak the truth from their heart, who do not slander with their tongue and who do no evil to their friends, nor take up a reproach against their neighbors, in whose eyes the wicked are despised, but who honor those who fear the Lord, who started by their oath even to their hurt, who do not lend money at interest, and do not take a bribe against the innocent. Those who do these things shall never be moved.
Well, I guess I'm going to be moved a little in life.
Says it's the ritual for admittance to the temple, an entrance liturgy.
Yeah, so I get it. like it's a great encouragement. You know, it's like the coach in the locker room before the football team goes out onto the field. You know, who are we? We are the invincible. Who are we? We are the strong and mighty. Who are we? We are the ones who speak the truth. And I get that. I get it as a cheer. You know, this is an encouragement to the people to say, hold fast to the things that endure and that really matter in this world. And so I think it's actually pretty awesome. I don't know about this do not lend money at interest, but
That's an Islamic thing, right?
It is. You're not supposed to deal in interest, either to receive it or to demand it of others.
now is that only for sisters and brothers who are Muslim?
No, you're not supposed to deal with anybody who deals with interest.
Oh.
So that makes it extremely difficult to live in the United States when you want to buy a house, or this question comes up all the time. And there are banks that deal with Islamic instruments, you know, to lend money in an Islamic way, but I don't fully understand them. And when I hear people talk about them, I don't think they fully understand it either. So, I mean, everything in this country, even if you're in a job where you get an IRA, you're dealing with, you know, questionable financial practices, questionable in Islam, not for anyone else, but so people are conflicted about that. But yeah, the law says, the rules of Islam say do not deal in interest.
Yeah.
So, and I think it comes right from this. It comes from the old Judaic understanding of don't lend money and demand interest when you lend money.
Yeah, because in other places where it's talked about, the money, you're lending money to someone who's in trouble. Mm-hmm. And, you know, like the loan sharks, they lend you money, but then they charge you 50% interest, and so they become more trouble than you had to begin with.
Exactly.
There was a few years back now, there was a really sort of awkward, embarrassing thing that happened in the Presbyterian Church because the conservatives were trying to fight against gay and lesbian ordination, and they were determined that all they were doing was enforcing the traditional view of marriage. That's what they said. We're not anti-gay or anything like that. We're just reaffirming the traditional view of marriage. So in the debates that took place throughout the United States, the question was, well, where is the traditional view of marriage upheld in Presbyterian principles and beliefs? And so they passed this amendment which said that the rules for Presbyterians in life were contained in the Book of Confessions. And the Book of Confessions should be adopted as equal to the Constitution for ordering rules of life. Well, after the amendment was in front of the whole body of the church, they began to read the Book of Confessions. And in the Book of Confessions, Presbyterians were barred from usury. They were barred from, in any way, shape, or form, of lending money at interest. And so here we are. Now we're trying to adopt this point of view that comes out of the past in order to defend against our fears against gay and lesbian marriage. We now have adopted a principle which would destroy the whole nation in which we live. You know, and this is supposed to be historical Presbyterianism. It was a joke. It's like you just can't resolve it like that. But this is, so who's worthy of going up into the house of God? I guess not many people in our world today. I mean, I'd be okay if we enforced that rule against all the people that charge me interest.
Right,
You know,
of course.
I'd like that, just fine.
But you want to get that interest.
Well, yeah,
in the,
you know,
in
but
the
I'm,
CDs.
yes, of course. But I think if I had to sit down and count it up, I pay more interest to others than I get from others. I think I'm a loser in this game, so let's quit the game. That would be all right with me.
Oh, gosh. Jeez.
But it reads like a badge of courage. It reads like a Boy Scout pledge, and nothing in it is bad. Speak the truth from your heart. Wow. And do not slander people with your tongue. Do not use your tongue to say things about people that aren't true. Do no evil. Look, it says do no evil to your friends.
Yeah.
Wow. And don't take up reproach against your neighbors. I don't know. You have to despise the wicked and honor those who fear the Lord. Who stand by their oath even to their hurt. People that will keep their promises even if it's personal pain.
Well, what is the purpose of going to the synagogue or the temple or the church? Or do only the people who are blameless go to the temple or to church or to the mosque? No. I think the way we kind of look at it now is the people who need it the most are the ones who do these things, and they should be in the temple.
Yes. No, I agree. And I don't think, although it lends itself to this sort of code of ethics about who's allowed to go in, I don't really think that's how it worked.
I don't think so either.
Like I said, I think it's more like a speech that the coach gives in the locker room to encourage the people. You keep the goals, the high goals of being a follower of God in front of you. These are the principles of our life. These are the goals that we pursue. I don't think for a minute that the psalmist ever believed any one person ever qualified on these 10 rules. Ever.
Who is perfect? No one.
No one.
There would be no one in the synagogue.
No. And we had a similar phrase like this before. I wish I could remember which psalm it was. But in the footnotes, they were talking about, let's see, who could sit in the seat of righteousness? None. And in the end, the list came up in order to create your own humility, so that you don't deserve to be in the house of God. Nobody ever deserves to be there. So as you're marching into the tabernacle, you're being reminded that the reason you are marching into the tent is because of the grace and mercy and the acceptance of God for you. Now, I know that's a stretch in this location or in this particular reading, but I remember reading that in another similar kind of psalm, and it made sense. Who is worthy to stand in the presence of God? Well, no one. But who stands in the presence of God? Those that God welcomes and that God brings in and makes acceptable. And that's what you learn when you go into the temple. That's what you do. You make your sacrifices for the sins, and you seek to make amends, and you acknowledge your own brokenness in the places where you don't measure up to these things. And like you said, that's the purpose of going to the temple. Otherwise, what do you need the temple for? If you can do all these things, and this is who you are, it's like Jesus said, I didn't come for the righteous. I didn't come to save the righteous. I came to save the sick and the broken and the lost. And the people who thought they were righteous went, oh, good, then you're not after us. Let's read one more, shall we?
You're really a glutton for.
I know. Well, those are short.
You keep thinking maybe we'll get to one
Yeah,
that
well-
will make us feel good.
That's right. That's exactly right. I'm a
That
feel-good.
one wasn't too bad. I mean,
I'm a feel.
Protect me, O God, for you I take refuge. I say to the Lord, you are my Lord. I have no good apart from you. As for the holy ones in the land, they are the noble, in whom is all my delight. Those who choose another God multiply their sorrows. Their drink offerings of blood I will not pour out, or take their names from my lips. The Lord is my chosen portion and my cup. You hold my lot. The boundary lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. I have a goodly heritage. I bless the Lord who gives me counsel. In the might also my heart instructs me. I keep the Lord always before me. Because he is at my right hand, I shall not be moved. Therefore my heart is glad, and my soul rejoices. My body also rests secure. For you do not give me up to Sheol, or let your faithful one see the pit. You show me the path of life. In your presence there is fullness of joy. In your right hand are pleasures forevermore.
Beautiful. I love this. I love this psalm. What about the rest of you? What do you think? It describes this wonderful intimacy between a human being and the sense of God and God's care for them and presence in the world, right? You don't like the happy psalms any more than you like the bad psalms.
right. Well, I'm still looking for something in here that's going to be not so good, and I can't find it.
Yeah, I can't either.
That's a shock.
I know.
I really like the idea of protect me, O God.
Yeah.
For you are in you I take refuge. That's not saying save me,
No.
God, but be with me,
Yep.
be present in my life.
Yep. And the next verse too is as sweet. You're my Lord, and it doesn't say. It says I have no good apart from you. It doesn't say that I'm not good apart from you.
Right.
It says in other words, everything that is good in my life comes from you. I mean, that's the wisdom that makes people strong. I don't know what verse 3 means. As for the holy ones in the land, they are the noble, in whom is all my delight. I don't know if that's a person that's happy for a just and noble priest in the temple or what. I don't know.
It says on my note, holy ones, unclear, perhaps gods or deified ancestors.
Oh. Yeah, I mean, that would, like we refer to saints, right? A cloud of witnesses of the saints that have gone on before us, that created an environment that strengthened us. I like that. They are all my delight. You hold my lot.
I like the verse 7. I bless the Lord who gives me counsel in the night. Also, my heart instructs me.
Isn't that
So it's kind of like there's two people in this give and take of counseling. God counsels, and also your heart leads you.
Yeah, I love that.
So there's there's two people in this relationship, or two entities, God and
And
the psalmist.
right, and your own heart, and listening to your heart. That sounds like good, solid wisdom to me.
Yeah.
And then the next phrase, the Lord is always before me, and so I will not be moved.
Yeah.
There's a strength in this way of going through life.
Act as if God is watching you, is always before you, and that's a good way to keep yourself in check, to counteract that first psalm that we read, where there's
Yes, I know. I
no
know.
godliness at all.
No, and look at verse 9 says, as a result of this, my heart is glad, and my soul rejoices, and my body rests. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I like that.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, and I like it so strong, I shall not be moved.
Yeah.
And it just comes out, seems to just rise up the whole thing for me. No matter what, I shall, with determination, shall not be moved.
And the result is, going down to verse 11, in your presence there's joy.
Right.
And in your right hand are pleasures forevermore. So somehow, in the middle of all this brokenness and confusion, there's this wonderful picture of serenity. Just a beautiful picture of serenity.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah. Okay.
let's leave it there.
Okay, exactly right. We're gonna let's get out with what we've got. I mean, that's the best.
We won't read the morning newspaper.
No.
All right.
I'm going to go home and open this Bible back up in my bed and read that before I close my eyes. It's beautiful. I think
Early in the morning.
I'll etch it up on my ceiling so when I look up at night, same words will cover me.
Right.
All right.
I was wondering,
What number is that?
That is Psalm 16.
no,
15.
16.
Yeah.
Oh, 16.
16.
16,
Yep.
yeah, not 15.
It's a good one. Psalm 16. All right, my
It's
friends.
a keeper.
I think that's it for tonight. Thank you for coming and joining in. I always
Thank
look
you.
forward to being together. No, one word of a reminder so it doesn't come at just the last minute. I'm going on vacation next week. So-
What?
Yeah, I know.
Who said you could?
Yeah. I'm going to be fishing in Canada.
Oh, no, you can't do it there,
Yeah.
can you?
I'm not going to do Zoom from the cabin in Canada. I'm not going to do that.
Not from the fish, not the lake.
Well, enjoy your vacation.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yep.
the following week then, yeah.
Yep. So we'll be there all week fishing. We're going to be in Ontario in a lake called Rideau Lake, and it's a new location for us, so we're hoping it's going to be fun.
Good.
And Sunday, a dear friend of mine who is an elder from the Jersey City Church, Robert Mason, is going to be preaching. He's an African-American man, retired from Prudential Insurance, but he's not an ordained clergy, but he could have been. And he carries his role. He's an energetic preacher and pastor, and I'm really excited for you. He preached here once before. I don't know if you'll remember it, but he did come and preach, and he loves it here. And I know everybody's going to really enjoy hearing him. He's fabulous. So I'm excited about that. So he'll be here to preach and lead the service on Sunday. Okay?
Good.
All right, my friends.
Yeah. Enjoy yourself. And
Thank you.
we'll-
God bless you.
We'll see you when you get back.
All right.
Have a good evening.
And keep reading
Bye.
Psalm
Bye.
16. Keep reading Psalm 16 until we see each other again.
Right. Memorize it.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
All right. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, my friends. Same words to you. I encourage you to. What a great psalm that is, and what a great light for living of our lives.